What gospel are they talking about? What is that first century Jewish gospel?
Um, yeah, so just to say it on the front end, the gospel is that the Messiah died for our sins so that we can live forever. The question is, what does living forever involve?
Right.
And so, uh, in the history of Christianity, you basically have three major redemptive narratives or stories that tell the story of God, creation, humanity, history, and the future. And this makes up one's worldview, how you see the universe, how you see its beginning, how you see it going wrong, how it's going to be made right, and how it's going to end up in the future in the end. And so throughout church history, you have three major worldviews or narratives at play. You have the Jewish uh, narrative. There's lots of different Jewish narratives throughout history, but we'll just say the first century Jewish narrative is of a particular flavor. And then you have the Greek narrative that really comes into play in the third and fourth centuries heavily. And then in the fourth and fifth centuries moving forward, you have the Roman narrative that comes into play. And so, in all three of those stories, people interpret the scriptures within that context.
Mm.
So, in a Jewish narrative, the Messiah died for our sins so that we can receive resurrected bodies on a new earth in the age to come with a new heavens and new earth forever and ever. In a Greek narrative, the Messiah died for our sins so that we can escape the material world and go to an immaterial world. And that's where you get kind of the classic eternal sing along in the clouds. In the Roman narrative, the Messiah died for our sins so that God can be glorified through the perpetual expression of divine sovereignty, basically taking over the world. And so that's why you have throughout the Middle Ages the cross painted on, the shields um, of conquering armies, and whether it's the Fifth Monarchy men or the Munster Rebellion or the Taiping heavenly kingdom on earth, it's always the same kind of narrative that God is his program is progressively expressing divine sovereignty to take over the world, and that's how it's all going to get fixed. So those three redemptive narratives, a lot of times, are being mixed. They're being synthesized. They're being piecemealed together in different ways. So there's three main ones. Then there's three kind of main syntheses. The Augustan synthesis, which is a combination of the Greek and Roman narratives, the church militant in this world before the church triumphant in the immaterial world. You have the dispensational synthesis, which is the combination of the Greek and Jewish narratives. So you have two plans of God, one for the material world for the Jews, one for the immaterial world for the Gentiles. And then you have the inaugurational synthesis that has a combination of the Roman and Jewish narratives. And then you have about 1,000 other, muddled syntheses, or a million other, depending on how small you make it. But that's usually where people will kind of piecemeal stuff together. But it all comes out of these three major narratives that can be fairly easily kind of traced back in church history where these ideas come from. The question is, what did Jews believe in the
Right.
first century? How did they view history, and how did they view the future unfolding? And so that was a big transition for me. I grew up not in any of those narratives. I grew up in a radically evolutionary household, never went to church, never opened a Bible. And so when I came to the Lord in college in the mid 90s, and then I went to seminary, everything was still in flux. I didn't have anything really solidly settled on. So when I encountered the Jewish narrative in seminary, reading historical studies, that this is, you actually read the texts that Jews at the time of the New Testament were reading, and we know they were reading them because we have lots of copies and lots of different languages, which is indicative that a lot of people are reading them. So texts like First Enoch, Fourth Ezra, Second Baruch, Book of Jubilees, Life of Adam and Eve, books like this They all paint kind of, there's variations, but they all kind of paint the same story of history and the future, and how the future is going to unfold. And so the New Testament then conforms, it's fairly similar to how they viewed the world in the future, the life of Jesus, and then how the apostles interpreted the death of the Messiah in context to that.